The best kind of horror is the one that lingers in the shadow of human cruelty, hidden among the crowd of enemies. Today's tale of terror, my friends, takes place within one of the cleanest homes in Japan. Behind the doors of this house, you will find every room spotless and immaculate, every piece of furnishing in its right place, absolutely nothing that is found disorganized or out of the ordinary. The occupants of this home consist of a mother, her two teenage girls, Reina and Shinri, and the maid, Aju. And even though this pristine house may have the comforts of a loving and well-kept home, I assure you, my friends, the world within this place is anything but happiness and comfort. Introduction: the tragic results of a terrible divorce. Not sure how the marriage between the mother and her ex-husband came to an end. Supposedly, it's the cause behind the strict demands of having everything kept organized and clean. This is a woman who views the outside world as something filthy, infected by a population that's unhygienic, which explains her reclusiveness and why she discourages her two daughters from going outside. The daily life of this woman is a ritual that consists of washing her hands every 10 minutes, taking a shower 4 times a day, and even having her two daughters shower immediately when returning home from school and having their clothing washed daily, decontaminating themselves from the filth of the outside world. Just recently, a plumber experienced the unforgiving wrath of this woman. After the mother found one of the bathroom sinks being clogged, having Aju hiring someone to fix the pipes, it was when the plumber first set foot inside the house with his socks, his dirty socks. The tension of having this man inside her home, doing his job on removing the clog in the pipes, berating him when finding a single drop of filthy sink water desecrating her bathroom floor, bringing his filth inside her precious home. Because of how the mother scolded the plumber for practically doing his job and being in the middle of a dispute between the mother and her two daughters, that plumber was just another person who had learned the hard way why people prefer avoiding this house. The two daughters, Reina and Shinri, two beautiful girls who are not afraid to express their arrogance, knowing that their looks would have the boys turn their heads, unlikable in their own unique way. Even though they don't share their mother's obsession with cleanliness and her views of the population being unhygienic, their spoiled behavior, bickering fights, and vanity is just an ingredient to the toxicity in this household. And then there's the maid, Aju, this poor woman who struggles on keeping up with the constant demands and excessively high expectations of her job, the obnoxious daughters, the constant screaming and yelling. Every day, Aju debates on the value of this occupation. Even though it pays well, most days she struggles with the idea that if the money is even worth the torment that she has to endure. But what this dysfunctional family doesn't know is that there is a lingering horror in the shadow of this human cruelty. It is the one place where a monster can blend right in and wait for the perfect moment to strike. Now, even though someone in their right mind would prefer staying away from this house, there are a couple people who have a fixation with the family inside, starting with an individual who stands out in his own unique way. Carrie, an eyesore, a young man who isn't too fond with his hygiene or appearance, notorious for his unbearable stench, his pale skin and clothing being covered with sweat, filth, and grime, and who has a special eye for one of the daughters, Reina. Even though Carrie is from a different school, for a few months now, Carrie would normally be found a block away from Reina's house, never failing on being there, waiting for her after school, seizing the opportunity to confess his love for her, oblivious to Reina's instant disapproval and disgust. But for Shinri, who's aware of her sister's admirer, the temptation of entertaining a cruel joke was irresistible, which is why on one day, Shinri met up with Carrie while he was waiting for Reina, telling him how Reina would always talk about him. The nice things, she would say, how he would always wait for her after school, and that their mother wanted to meet him, which is why Shinri invited Carrie to her house. All this time, Carrie couldn't find Reina's house. You can imagine the happiness within this man when standing outside this beautiful home while Shinri went inside to get her mother. The unhealthy fixation Carrie had with Reina being feeded with the promises of indulging his obsession. And after waiting for a long time, that was when the mother opened a window on the second floor, had a good look at the filthy boy in front of her house, and began throwing eggs at Carrie, scolding and berating Carrie, this disgusting creature lingering outside her home. And Carrie just stood there while the mother continued throwing eggs, taking in the punishment for his obsessive fixation. And when reality had finally kicked in, his fantasy of winning Reina's love was but a foolish and unhealthy fantasy. That was when Carrie left. As for Reina, who was spared another day of running into her obsessive admirer, she was currently dealing with another individual who wanted to find a way back into this toxic household. Reina's father. Even though he had seen better days, for the past couple weeks Reina's father would find his daughter Reina or Shinri after school and make the hopeless effort of trying to reconnect with them. But knowing about her mother and her reaction if she were to find out that her daughters were talking to their father, this is why both girls felt that it was best to avoid their father, knowing that the consequences would be severe. But on that night, things were about to get interesting when this family would receive a midnight visit from an unsuspecting guest. An individual who was determined to get inside this house. A burglar? A stalker? Whoever it was, the moment that this man had made his way through the hallway window, that was when he would be greeted by the mother, welcoming the midnight visitor with a baseball bat to the head. Waking up to the commotion downstairs, the sounds of their mother going into a screaming frenzy, and the loud thuds of a bat striking a man's head and body. Immediately, the two girls rushed downstairs to find their mother viciously striking someone, a thief who would be stupid enough to break into this house. And when Reina turned on the hallway light, the two girls would be shocked when finding the man who had broken into their house wasn't a thief, not a stalker. It was their father. And as a result of their mother attacking him with a bat, the father succumbed to his fatal injuries and passed away. The following day, the town was shocked when learning about the woman who beat her ex-husband to death with a baseball bat. Supposedly what happened was that she killed him in self-defense. They said that he was found with a knife, and according to the man's history with depression, his several attempts at trying to reach out to his daughters, police concluded that the father was attempting to break into the house and commit suicide with his two daughters. Of course, that's not what really did happen. The mother tampering with the crime scene by placing a knife in her ex-husband's hand. She did that to make it look like it was in self-defense. But the tension in the house was growing more hostile, especially the fact that Aju was unable to remove the bloodstains from the floor. All day, Aju would be continuously berated by the mother. Not that she was incapable of doing her job, it's just that it's literally impossible to remove the blood because of how it's permanently stained into the wooden floor. And even though Aju tried explaining this, stating a fact instead of being a maid who's talking back, Aju just could not bear another second of being screamed and yelled over something that is out of her control, which is why she finally had enough of the madness and quit. So knowing what kind of toxic people are residing within this pristine home, the unbearable mixture of bickering, cruelty, and hostility, things are about to take an interesting turn when a lingering horror will be added into this madness, beginning with the kitchen sink being clogged. Except, unlike the last clog, when the sink is backed up, it would take a few minutes before the water would recede, and a strange moaning can be heard, coming from the pipes. Because of the incident with the plumber and Aju quitting, The mother decided to take care of the clogged pipe by herself by using boiling water, which can melt the oil stains in the pipe. And when the mother carefully poured the scalding water into the drain, watching the water recede much quicker, assuming that the clogged pipe was fixed with a simple method, until the strange moaning sound would be heard from the sink again, much louder this time. An unnatural sound. Maybe it's the sounds of boiling water going down the drain, or maybe it's an unremitting horror that found its way into this house. Throughout the whole day, those sounds of distorted moaning never ceased, haunting the entire house. Both Raina and Shinri knew that the sounds were coming from the drain pipe, and because of how there was pipes within the walls throughout the entire house, it explains how the moaning could be heard in every room. There was an uncomfortable feeling that the girls had with this moaning. It was like there was something inside the pipes, and when Shinri paid close attention to the sound, a panic began to dwell within, believing that these were the sounds of her father. Because of what happened, Shinri believed that her father's soul now resides within the drain pipe, seeking vengeance for his death. But for the mother, her ex-husband was haunting her in a different way, oblivious to the inhuman sounds because of the dried bloodstains that were still on the floor. A reminder of that horrible night, and as the mother desperately tried removing the filthy remains of her ex-husband, the efforts of sanitizing her home was helpless. The stain wasn't coming off, and when seeing some of the blood on her hands, immediately the mother rushed to the bathroom to cleanse herself from the filth. Didn't care that the bathroom sink was also clogged and water overflowing onto the floor. There was blood on her hands. Her skin had been contaminated with a filthy disease, and as she continued scrubbing her hands, that was when a hand had suddenly reached out from the sink and grabbed the mother by the arm. When the girls heard the blood-curdling screams from their mother, immediately they rushed to her aid, finding her on the bathroom floor in a state of hysteria, claiming that she was grabbed by a hand that came from the pipe. Even though the girls couldn't find any trace of a hand, there was a putrid smell that lingered in the air. But the mother began to have a panic attack because of the wet and sticky slime that was on her arm. Having the girls fetch her a container of water, knowing that there was something in the pipes, instantly the mother began scrubbing the substance off her arm. And it was like that throughout the entire morning. The mother kept scrubbing and scrubbing, trying everything she could to get the slimy filth off of her arm. It wasn't until Shinri noticed the blood, that the amount of time her mother had scrubbed her arm, her skin began to peel, exposing the muscle tissue. Immediately, Raina called for an ambulance, and the mother was rushed to the hospital. When the girls came back home from the hospital, while the doctors were tending to their mother's injury, the house was still filled with that overwhelming odor, a stench that was coming from the pipes, lingering in the air. Except for Shinri, this was a familiar odor. That boy who kept stalking Raina. The whole house smelt like him. What if it was him in the pipes? There have been cases of people dislocating their shoulders to fit into tight spaces. Even though it sounds impossible, but still, it could be a possibility that he's trying to make his way inside the house by fitting into the storm drain outside. Maybe he's in the pipes drinking the water and having it come out the other end, making that horrible groaning sound. Sure, he may look overweight, but he also doesn't look human. And with Raina laughing off her sister's idea of Carrie lurking within the pipes, there was no way she could believe something so ridiculous. First was her father's ghost, now Carrie. It sounded ridiculous. Now a mutant creep squeezing himself into the pipes like a snake. No, the reasons why the pipes are all messed up and that there's a terrible stench in the house was because of all the hair, oil, and stuff that clogged up in the pipes. Seeing how their mother had been using the showers and sink excessively, it was just a matter of time before the pipes would be clogged up again. The smell isn't Carrie. It's nothing more but dirty water. So while Reina decided to open up some of the windows, bring in some fresh air, Shinri went ahead and began to take a shower. You know, my friends, when you are very popular with making enemies, giving people a reason to act out in vengeance, it does give you a dwelling fear. It may even have you believing the supernatural. A guilty conscience may give you the idea of a ghost or a mutant lurking within the pipes. But what if there was a horror lurking inside this house, something that was hidden in the drain, something that has its eyes centered on this beautiful girl? And when the lid of the shower drained open, that was when Shinri ran out of the bathroom screaming in terror, claiming that she saw something looking at her through the drain. But when Reina went to investigate, as expected, she found nothing. Completely fed up with her sister's silly talk of Carrie being in the drain, this ended up with both sisters throwing themselves into another heated argument. But when Shinri began blaming her sister for Carrie being within the pipes, that he wouldn't be in there if it wasn't for her, that was when Reina snapped and began forcing her sister to the drain, proving to her that there was nothing in the pipes by forcing her hand into the drain. And when she managed to put Shinri's hand into the drain, hoping to prove that these were nothing but superstitious fables, Shinri found herself unable to pull her hand out of the drain. Something inside that was sticky and slimy, trying to grab her hand. And when Shinri's entire arm was suddenly pulled into the drain, fear began to set in. There was something inside the drain, trying to pull Shinri inside, and when Shinri began to panic when feeling a tug, screaming for her sister to help her, Reina still wasn't buying it. Her sister in these silly games, the audacity to say that it was because of her that this house is haunted by that creep, and fed up with this act, how far her sister is willing to go. Reina just ignored her sister's pleas for help and left her in the bathroom with her arms stuck inside the drain. After an hour of Shinri screaming for help, it was when the screaming began to turn into the sounds of muffled gurgling and wet cackling. Reina started to get worried, and when Reina went to the bathroom to check on her sister, what Reina saw in the bathroom was something that her mind could not comprehend. Her sister's legs dangling lifelessly in the air while the rest of her body was inside the drain. The sounds of bones crackling. Something inside the pipes was pulling her into the drain. Reina was frozen with terror, watching her sister's feet and toes disappear into the drain. That was when Reina began to scream. So I wonder, my friends, if it is that creeper who's the one that pulled Shinri into the drain, revenge for what she had done to him earlier. Or maybe it was her father's ghost. Or maybe it was something else. Could be anything. But currently, there are now 2 people who are clogged inside the pipe. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my friends, I would love to take the time and recognize these individuals who were generous enough to help and support this channel. Even though as a YouTuber that cannot monetize for various reasons, there have been times where I have struggled on maintaining this channel. And I cannot express how truly grateful I am for these individuals who have been kind enough to help me with that issue and keep a steady flow of horror stories from your favorite writer and artist Junji Ito and other tales that I bring to my channel. My friends, I love what I do on here. I don't see it as a job, but more of a hobby that I devote myself to because of my love for horror and even Junji Ito. Regardless of how people may view my channel and my methods on presenting these stories, there's a lot of passion that I put into this channel. Once again, For those who are supporting this channel, I thank you.